Caravaggio went on to Naples. Back in Rome, he was condemned as a murderer and made subject of a banda capitale. From this point on, anyone in the Papal States had the right to kill him, and they could deliver the body or just the head to claim the reward. He included his own severed head in this David and Goliath, done for the Pope's nephew, Scipione Borghese. Some say it's a late picture, but I think he did it on the run in 1606, as if to say, you can have my head in a painting, if only you'll let me keep it for real. Caravaggio made his mark in Naples by painting a great altarpiece. Its subject is the acts of mercy, the good deeds preached by the Catholic Church. Burying the dead, clothing the naked, giving the hungry succor, symbolized here by the breast of Christian charity. The dramatic lighting of Caravaggio's style was a revelation in Naples. I'd arranged to meet Peter Robb, whose book M claims that Caravaggio was murdered. He knows Naples well and thinks the city clearly made a big impression on the painter.
He would have been overwhelmed, I think, by the crowd. The city had 3 times the population in a much smaller area than Rome. It was built up vertically, and people weren't allowed to build outside the walls. You have these very narrow streets. Buildings about 3 times as high, many stories higher than the buildings in Rome. Teeming with life, incredible density of population, which is exactly what you see in the painting.
During Caravaggio's time here in Naples, he was at the crossroads of his life. Having fled here after the murder, he would leave after just 9 months for the island of Malta, before getting into trouble once again, out of the frying pan into the fire. Peter Robb told me I'd been wasting my time looking for Caravaggio's killers in Rome.
Go to Malta, and when you get to Malta, go to the Fort Sant'Angelo, which is the huge castle on the point overlooking the harbor. When you get to the center of that massive fortress, you'll find a small hole in the ground. That was the condemned cell for Knights of Malta. That's where Caravaggio, from the height of his fame, success, and wealth, ended up. This is the sequence of events that you need to understand if you're going to understand his death.
So I went to Malta, though I still didn't know why Caravaggio had come here. Maybe the Colonna family fixed it for him. Maybe the heat was on in Naples. Or maybe he'd always hankered after the social cachet of being a Knight of Malta, with the title Cavaliere. Malta was ruled by the military order of the Knights of St. John of Jerusalem. Defenders of the faith against Turks and Corsair pirates, they were noble and theoretically celibate, having taken vows of obedience, poverty, and chastity. The reality of what was an all-male garrison town with a thriving slave trade may have been different. Head of the order was the Grand Master, Alof de Vignacourt, a Frenchman who had great cultural ambitions for the city of Valletta. Caravaggio painted this portrait of him with a young page. Vignacourt was deeply impressed. He pulled every string he could and obtained a special papal dispensation to make the painter a knight, despite his criminal record. At first, the arrangement must have seemed ideal. Vignacourt got the most famous artist in all of Italy, and Caravaggio got some heavyweight protection. On the 14th of July, 1608, after spending the required year and a day as a novice, Caravaggio was made a Knight of Obedience in recognition of his artistic merit. He paid his entry into the order with a great painting of the beheading of John the Baptist for the Oratory of St. John. What I really wasn't prepared for here was the scale of the picture. It's absolutely vast. It's far bigger than anything else Caravaggio ever painted. Got that feeling of almost of a cinema screen. Perhaps because he was depicting what any hired swordsman or mercenary killer still had the right to do to him, Caravaggio could see it so clearly in his mind's eye, could paint John's death as if he'd been an eyewitness to it. Most chilling is the figure of the executioner, who carries out his work with such matter-of-fact professionalism.
It's quite a grisly painting, quite a depressing depiction of the decapitation of a man. It's almost appallingly realistic. Sword has done half the job, but it's not complete, and there he is with this horrible razor, this razor blade that's more or less in the middle of the painting, catching the light glinting, and he's going to use it to slice the last piece of skin and remove the head.
Because the picture's life-size, it's all the easier to imagine yourself into the scene, which was just what the order required. Novice knights of Malta were trained here. If they could face up to this, then they'd be ready for action. It's a picture that shows just how determined Caravaggio was to make it as a Knight of Malta. He's even signed his Christian name, Michelangelo, in the blood that's gushing from the neck of St. John. It's the only painting he ever signed.
It makes you wonder what on earth went wrong. What went wrong here on Malta?
Some early accounts suggest a quarrel with a noble knight, but Peter Robb had told me it was something strictly taboo.
If you know how to interpret the evidence, the very absence of records in the matter of Caravaggio's crime in Malta is extremely interesting and extremely suggestive. Because what inevitably you get brought to consider is il vitio nefandum, the unmentionable crime. The crime which filled the church and the Christian order with particular horror at the height of the Counter-Reformation, was a particular object of interest to the Inquisition, which led to death, but could not be talked about. And that crime was sodomy, or if you like, being gay.